Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Be Fierce Multisport podcast. I'm Jill Bartholomew, head coach at Be Fierce and your host for this podcast. Today, I'm back with Troy Theodosio, my co-host, and we're going to be talking about a number of topics, including Ironman Texas, which is coming up this next weekend. And we have Liz DeGinto in the studio with us to talk about physical therapy and specifically injury prevention and rehabilitation. She is my physical therapist. So, I thought, I spend quite a lot of time with, my physical therapist, and like, come on, let's be honest, right? If you're an athlete, if you say you're an athlete and you don't have a physical therapist and an orthopedist on speed dial, are you actually an athlete?
Well said.
All right. So on that note, where do we want to start? How about we start with Ironman Texas?
Yeah, that's a good starting point, considering the fact that you are the one racing.
I am. I'm not the only one, though. And we were just looking at the forecast right before the podcast, and it's not looking good. I was all prepared for a hot race, a dry race, a cold race. The thing I hadn't considered was a wet race. So this whole week is looking like lightning storms out there in the woodlands, Texas. Yeah. And the good side of that maybe is like the current water temperature is apparently 78 degrees. And as we know, 76.1 is the magic number for wetsuits. Yep. And I'd much rather wear a wetsuit if it's close than not. Yeah. So I'm hoping that rain brings us down a bit to under 76.1. But if not, I'm bringing my swim skin with me. It's on the bed waiting to be packed because I'm not packed yet. And I'll admit to that. I'm not packed yet. And we get on a plane at 9:11 in the morning tomorrow to head to Texas. So, there's that. So I was telling you guys earlier before this, I was on a call, been on calls. I'm like multitasking. I waxed my brand new bike chain while sitting here.
Thankfully, this is not your first rodeo, Jill.
It is not my first rodeo. That said, like, there's nothing worse than that feeling of like, oof, I haven't packed. But I got my list. It's in OneNote. I have my list. It's the same list that I used for Lake Placid. It's the same list I used for Nice. So far, it's gotten me through those. It's the same list I've used for every half I've done. The only difference is the quantities of nutrition that come are a little bit larger. But there's that. And this time at Texas, I got these spiffy new shirts.
I saw that.
Right? Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I got those because I'm going to be in the TriDot expert coach booth. So, to our listeners out there, if you're, doing Ironman Texas and you want to say hi, like, come by and, give a wave and say, hey, I heard your podcast.
Yeah. Jill, do you know what your hours will be when you'll be at the booth?
I believe it's Thursday morning and Friday afternoon. I don't have them in front of me, but I think that's where it's settled.
Okay, well, now's a good opportunity for you to follow at the Tri Mom. Follow Jill on Instagram and make sure you send her a message. If you're in the area, make sure that you pop down to the village and the TriDot booth where Jill will be, and be sure to say hi.
Yeah, and if you follow me during race weeks, historically, you know that I'm not shy at posting.
Good deal.
Yeah, I think at the Disney race, my son said to me, he's like, Mom, can you please stop posting? He's like, my friends are embarrassed on your behalf.
Oh dear. Well, it's Ironman Texas. Jill, let's cut to the chase. How are you feeling going into race week?
It's a good question. Not as good as I'd like, but this weekend was a good weekend. We did the Disney races a couple weeks ago and kind of did something to the piriformis at that. Luckily that's like recovered. And that was the weirdest thing. It was like before the running even started, I hurt myself. Didn't set a good stage. But this weekend, I rocked it on the bike, had 2 reasonably long bike rides. I rode up Valley Forge Mountain on Friday evening. So I was about, I think it was like 3,000 feet total. And then we did another almost 60 miles, I think it was, 50 something on Saturday. Was not quite as steep on any one grade, but was still pretty good. And which is good. Like, Texas is pretty flat. It's only like 1,200 feet, I think, on the 112 miles, which might as well be flat.
Sure.
And that was pretty good. I took home a new all-time power output for 5 minutes, and I think it was 5 or 6 top 10 Strava segments. So it wasn't a bad weekend. So I'm feeling pretty good on the bike. The run, we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Yeah, my runs are my weakest of the 3 sports, I think. And my like standalone, marathon times around 3:50. I've yet to pull off less than a 4:30 in a full Ironman. So like if I can pull off a 4:30 at Texas or even a sub 5, I'd be happy.
And Jill, for those who haven't joined us prior to this, I think what's important is to just talk about expectations in terms of going into this race and what it is you aim to achieve here.
Yeah. So this race, to recap, had originally started as an A race. Back when I registered for this in the fall, I was thinking this would be an A race. I already have a Kona slot, but, wanted to see an age group podium here, or, top 5. My, goals changed a bit. In the fall, I ended up getting injury, in like November-ish. And, we've been in PT since then, which is why Liz is here, because she's been my expert therapist since then. And, made the decision over the winter that, this is no longer an A race, but it's still a race. I'm still going to go out and have fun and hopefully not, suck too bad at it. I did 12:28, 12:30, somewhere in there at, Lake Placid last year. It's about a half hour longer at Nice, which I think makes sense given the course.
Yeah.
So I would love to see an under 12, which, wasn't my original goal. My original goal, I think, was, under 11:30. Yeah. But yeah, if I can pull off an under 12, I'd be excited.
Okay. Finish line first.
Well, have I ever told you my my race priorities?
No.
So every race has the same goals. Don't die is number 1. It sounds like something that's an obvious, but there's enough people that take that one for granted. You got to say it. Yeah. So don't die. Finish is number 2. Yeah. These are in priority order, by the way. Mm-hmm. So don't die, finish. Don't finish last is next. And then do better than last time.
Okay.
So those are always my goals in every race, right? Now sometimes there's another goal that's like finish an Ironman in under 12 hours. But it comes back to like, okay, like let's start with don't die. And then let's cross the finish line. And then if we cross the finish line, let's not be the last one to cross the finish line. And if we can do that, let's do better than last time.
I want to add one to that list, Joel. And this might be new implementation, but something that I think most will agree with. And this is not to say this might kind of just be in your subconscious, but you've also got to enjoy yourself.
That's true. Yeah, that's got to be on there. You got to have fun.
You are doing what you love. Mm-hmm. You love it so much you became a coach. You transitioned.
I even had the shirt made.
Exactly, and I think we we should never lose sight of that enjoyment element, because even though they're goals, some more serious than others, I think whatever we do in life, it's important to enjoy what you're doing. And you know as well as I do that when it comes to all sports, to have somebody else experience that same level of joy just from an encouraging word, or you're going through a bit of a rough patch and somebody says something or compliments you, or you know how it's really changed the dynamic of your day. And I think that's important.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, one of the most powerful things to me is when your coach can say, I understand, I've been there and I've done that and it's normal.
Yeah.
You know, I had, you know, one athlete this week, you know, she had a rough week last week and, you know, things didn't go the way she wanted them to. And it's like, it's okay. It happens to everyone. We all have off weeks. You know, sometimes we, you know, I had this happen earlier this year, right? You know, things were going fine with the training. And then there was a week I got on the bike and like what should normally feel easy felt hard.
Yeah.
Like my warm-up pace, my warm-up output on Zwift felt like a zone 4 workout.
Yeah.
As like it happens.
And that's so indicative of life in and of itself. I think, you know, sometimes you hit a wall, right? And it's just like what should feel easy. And I think, Liz, when it comes to your line of work and seeing athletes with regards to the rate at which they recover and they rehab and they progress, what we expect isn't often the outcome. And that's indicative of life. And most of the time, you know, we want to see progress. We want to feel good. We want to be strong. But, you know, in different seasons for different reasons, we hit these walls. And, you know, it's part and parcel of what we do.
Maybe don't use me as an example for this one because like I'll like get to like 90% recovered and then I'll go do a race and be like, I can't walk, fix it.
I was going to say, you're super brave having Liz with us, because Liz has got the freedom to now share the good, the bad, and the ugly, because
I know.
And you can't hide.
I know. For the listeners, I gave her full carte blanche. I'm like HIPAA out the window. Like, go ahead, use me as an example. It's fine. You know, if I don't like it that much, I'll edit it out.
Okay. Well, I love your transparency and your vulnerability, Jill. And Liz, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You call it vulnerability. It might be stupidity or like
bravery.
Just being real.
Bravery,
being real.
Being honest.
Yeah, being real. And I like to think we deal in real, which I think is important because ultimately when you're transparent and you're real, it resonates with people, like-minded people. So good for you.
Yeah. So Liz, why don't you tell us about yourself? You know, so you and I met, and like no one ever wants to meet physical therapists this way, but you know, so you and I met because you know, back in the fall, I was showing all the signs of a fractured femur, and I'd been going to a different PT at the time. And after a number of ortho visits, you know, they're like, well, it's not a fractured femur, and we want you to go to this other physical therapy place that's different than the one I've been going to, because by the way, I changed my ortho too because I didn't really kind of think there were, you know, it's like as an athlete, you know, you have certain expectations. It's like you want your physicians to understand you as an athlete, right? Not just you as a like mid-40s female, right?
Yeah.
And you know, athletes, you know, we're built differently. So, you know, we met that way. And, you know, that was back in what, like November or something?
I think it was December.
Okay.
November, December,
yeah. And here we are in April, end of April, mid-April. It's closer to the end. It's after tax day. It's closer to the end.
Yeah. So since I've seen you, I would say there's been ups and downs. Do you agree in terms of the recovery?
You could say that.
Say that.
She's not
But-
denying it. She's smiling, which means
Not
she's
denying it. No.
guilty as
Yeah.
charged.
Yeah. Like I remember, after wine. Now I think I was seeing you at Wine and Dines. It was like end of November.
Yeah.
And actually that was the end of October. So that was no, maybe not. Definitely was seeing. Okay, so I know when I started. All right, it was before Dopey, and I came home from Dopey, and I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Which says a lot because pain management.
You ran through.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Threshold over here.
Fracture for how long? A couple months.
Mm-hmm.
When you had that fracture.
Oh, when I had the fracture.
Yeah. Like way back.
Oh yeah. So I had fractured my leg in my right femur.
Yeah.
It's a weird fracture because it wasn't a femur head.
Yeah.
And it was a femoral shaft.
Yeah.
And it was on the opposite side that you would normally expect it to be.
Yeah.
And it kind of looked like a snapped twig. So we never really figured out quite how it happened.
Yeah.
Although we think we have an idea that may not be strictly sports related, but we treated it as if it happened as a stress injury, but we don't actually think it was. So like that was like November 2022.
Right.
I had like this sudden pain behind my knee. And that was before Wine and Dine. And I ran Wine and Dine. It was like super painful. And then afterwards, came back, saw an ortho, and they did an MRI on my knee and said, nothing wrong with your knee. It must be IT band. So they treated my IT band and then ran Philly Marathon. Same. Then treated my IT band some more. Then a cortisone shot. And then ran Dopey in January. And that was horribly painful.
Yeah. But
it was starting to improve by then.
Mm-hmm.
And then ran Princess in February. And right after we got back, I came back and I said to the orthopedist, I'm like, can we take an MRI of the full leg? And like, this is where like, caveat emptor, buyer beware. That's when we found that I had in fact had a fracture of the femur, like pretty high up, but it was on the back side of the leg.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, that was what, like mid-February, and it happened in early November.
Wow.
So
it's a long time.
All said and done, I ran Philadelphia Marathon, Disney Marathon, and London Marathon, and God only knows how many half marathons, plus all the training runs.
I was going to say, you can't even negate all the volume that you did leading up.
Yeah. On like an actual broken leg.
Right. That goes to show too, like how resilient our bodies are and how strong like bones truly are. A lot of times we see kind of people have a certain perception of like pain, especially with spine related injuries, that you get the imaging done and it shows herniations all through your lumbar spine and people feel like they're like broken and their spine, they're never going to be able to get past this pain. But you're a perfect case of you ran on a broken femur and you're still rehabbing it now, but it really goes to show how resilient your body can be, especially when through that whole time you were training it, rehabbing, recovering your body, like giving yourself the right nutrients to continue being able to train and perform at such a high level. So even though
I'm totally convinced that the reason why, because like all of the stuff that's wrong with me is in my right leg, right?
Yeah.
It's like everything that we've, rehabbed has been on the right side. I'm totally convinced that it's because I had that fracture and it wasn't properly rehabbed because we didn't know it was a fracture.
Yeah.
And like we can talk about like, okay, well, like, should we have known? But like the fact was we didn't know and treated it like something it wasn't.
Yeah.
You raised such an interesting point though, Liz, because how often, and I'm assuming that the answer is more often than not, but how often do you have people like Jill come in and because of tolerance and pain threshold, the condition or the injury is far worse than it should have been had it been detected earlier on.
Yeah, very often, I would say. A lot of our like overuse, strain type of injuries, and I feel like you generally see it with higher level athletes. I feel like, especially for me growing up playing sports, I think it's more well known now, the importance of like fitness and recovery and really taking care of your bodies. But I know for me growing up, that wasn't really, I played ice hockey, and it was just, you always played through injuries, and you wanted to play through injuries. You know, if someone wasn't telling you to sit out, like you weren't sitting out. But I now see it.
Brings up a question, so I'm a mom, right? I have 2 kids. Both are athletes. One is a runner and performs at a pretty high level and with a lot of load.
Very high. Yeah.
Right. So like some of that load is prescribed by his coach. Some of that load is not prescribed by his coach because, he and I, like to race from time to time. Not each other, because like he is now faster than me on the run. Now, the second like you introduce other sports, all bets are off. But in a running event, he's much faster than me. I think at our last event, he was waiting at the finish line. He's like, "What?" He literally said, as I crossed the finish line, "What took so long?"
Oh dear.
Yeah. So, but
make him do his laundry for that.
Laundry, cleaning toilets. Like what other chores?
Remind him that you bore him.
Yeah.
Right.
That's always a good starting point.
Yes. So anyways, as a parent, how do we recognize that our kids who are athletes and, who as kids may not recognize when things are not going the way they need to, like, how do we recognize that it's time for them to take a day off or see a doctor or whatever?
Yeah, I think that can be tough, honestly, because like kids are very resilient to pain, and a lot of times maybe don't realize they're in pain or just think it's just their body's sore or whatever. It can be hard to identify pain versus soreness and so on. But I think especially with sports now, like they're just all year round. It doesn't like baseball. It used to be, I thought, more of like a spring or fall sport. It just seems like it goes all year around for kids now. So I think, I'm not a parent, but if I were a parent, allowing your kid to kind of like have the season of that sport and then like really take a rest from it. If you're a pitcher and you're just pitching like all year long, how is that arm ever going to rest and recover? And especially in those growing ages, those bones are still developing, the muscles are still developing. So if you're overworking your body at that age, that's just kind of like contributing to the way your body's going to develop overall. And I feel like it can start at a young age, all those overuse injuries that just start to become more habitual.
Yeah, I wasn't a runner when I was in school, so it's been fascinating to me as a parent watching this because in middle school, they run in the fall with cross country, but it's not like really that much load. And they run in the spring with track, but again, it's not really that much load. And before that, elementary school, I had the kids involved with like soccer, other sports. Over the summer, there was a track and field thing that was like a couple of days a week at the high school. And but the moment, they make it to high school, it's like a completely different animal. It's like they start with, in this case, with running, summer cross country, they get a week off, and then cross country starts in the fall and they get 2 weeks off, and winter track starts and they get a week off, and track starts and then they get 2 weeks off, and it repeats.
Right.
So like, I'm like, on the one hand, I love the coach because I know that like he talks a lot about like making sure that the kids are healthy and that they're not hurting themselves. And when they do get hurt, I've seen him put kids through programs that are not as intensive. But like through all that as a parent, I'm like, on the one hand, it's great watching your child kind of progress and improve at a really remarkable pace. On the other hand, it's like, ooh, I wonder, how do I know when too much is too much? And like, what are the signs that like, I should be looking for to be like, hey, I see an injury brewing. Like, take it easy for a day or two.
Yeah. Well, I would just say even like in terms of his performance, if performance starts to lack, if they're seeming, more fatigued with workouts or runs that generally would be easier, starting to have soreness onset earlier in a run, certain muscle groups starting to become more aggravated. As a parent, I feel like one way to help prevent injury that you have more control over, just monitoring, is how much sleep they're getting a night. I mean,
Clearly
maybe
you don't have teenagers.
That's what I started that with. I don't have any kids. But making sure you're getting like 6-7 hours at least, like 7 to 9. Making sure you're hydrating, replenishing electrolytes. I feel like those are a lot of things that kind of get like lost that could easily be, if they're just implemented, can really help a lot in the long run.
So all good advice. And I've seen that too, right? Like after we go out and race, like even these Disney races, he's like, I'm just going to do a tempo race. All right. Yeah. I get that's what you think your tempo pace is, but it's not. And then you come back in the next 2 weeks, your paces went down. It's like, okay. Yeah. The signs are there. But anyways, so you and I have been seeing each other for a while. Talk about like a runner comes in and is complaining of whatever. Like, how do you approach that? And like, what are the things that they should be doing to not have to come and see you?
So when anybody comes in, a runner, anybody, obviously
other than like starting with the not one of them again, not another athlete.
But always like start with, a comprehensive assessment, look at your general just posture, even the way kind of your body lies, and then range of motion, mobility assessment, look at your strength, just kind of like statically testing. And then also I think like functionally looking at your strength is a big indicator of where any weaknesses lie, whether it's like truly a strength weakness or maybe more like mobility, joint related. Looking at your balance and overall stability. For runners, a lot of like single leg assessments, because like we talked about even today, like you're on one leg for, so it's important to make sure you're strong in that single leg position. And just kind of see the way you like bear your weight through your foot, where all those contact points are going. I know for you, we initially at the eval, we looked a lot at your ankle mobility. A lot of times like limitations at the ankle, at the hip can contribute to symptoms overall. And I see a lot of like pelvic instability with runners, I would say. A lot of strains. I have you right now and a couple other for hamstring strains.
Does that have a lot to do with compensation, Liz? Like you talking about like doing a lot of those isolated tests where you're looking at instability, but also again, like given Jill has said that most of her injuries have been on one side of her body, specifically one leg. Obviously, compensation plays a huge role in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And with you too, like you had that femoral fracture. So a lot of this is probably a result from that.
The aftermath.
And your body, kind of the aftermath, and you're still working through it, but then it starts to affect other parts of your body as well because of those compensations. Growing up, did you ever have like a history of injuries to that right side, or was it more since that one?
Funny you should ask that.
Because I find with a lot of people, it's like, it's always one side, whether it's the back, but all the way down, but it's like, they always had a history. So and not every case, but.
Yeah. I didn't really have a lot of injuries growing up, like of that extent, right? Like it's kind of the normal stuff. No, I would say like the issues with the right leg started from a speed skating accident, which actually is what caused me to exit speed skating. I had fallen on a rink that, as it turned out, didn't have enough padding. And I ended up in the hospital with some nerve damage in my back that caused a drop foot on the right side. So I had a like less than 1% nerve conduction on the right leg below the knee in that peroneal nerve for a year to a year and a half. It took about 5 years for it to come back.
Yeah.
And that was like with seeing a neurologist who like seemed to enjoy putting needles in me that, electrodes and pushing electricity through the nerves, and that was fun. But now it came back, but still to this day, like that shin muscle, still gets sore very easily.
Yeah,
I bet.
So I wonder if that even, like, if everything that's gone on with your right leg kind of stemmed from weaknesses that came out of that initial injury. Because you train at such a high level too, like, and you've been doing this for how long?
A while.
Yeah.
Liz, talk us through some of the common injuries that you see on a more regular basis. To Jill's point, specifically with runners, what are some of those? What are those common injuries that folks should look out for as a result of what you see on a daily or weekly basis?
I would say low back pain, SI joint, kind of going along with that, like pelvic instability I find in that, but that's not necessarily why they're coming. And then a lot of like just strain, hamstring strain, some hip flexors.
All of our listeners who are runners now are like, yeah, my back hurts.
Yeah.
It's funny how when she says it, automatically you start feeling the discomfort. Yeah, that's your sign that you should probably go get that looked at, right? Like we kind of talked about telltale signs, and I think one of the most important things that we didn't mention is the fact that our ability to be in tune with our bodies, i.e. listening, because profoundly we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, and we listen, and we don't always listen well when it comes to our bodies. So there's a little light going off, and the alarm you only hear when you're in excruciating pain. It's been going off for the last several weeks. We only starting to pay attention, to Liz's point, when it's a little late in terms of like acknowledging that there's something wrong.
I mean, like one of the big things I had to learn, and Troy, I'm sure you're the same way, and others, is like the different, and I now say it to people, is like learn the difference between discomfort and pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like discomfort is expected. Pain should not be happening.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Liz will endorse what I say with regards to don't be too quick to dismiss. You know, I'm very pro using Google, but Google doesn't replace.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
Google, and I'm saying this intentionally because Google doesn't replace Liz's expertise, the years she spent studying, and more importantly, the people and the athletes that she diagnoses certain injuries, runs through these various assessments. It's kind of like a craftsman. Who better knows the craft than the craftsman? And I think that's what's important to stress here, is that you know, as much as we like to think that we're all knowing, we're not. In this case, if you feel that something is wrong or is not firing the way it should, or you're not feeling a certain way, nobody knows you better than you know yourself. But when it comes to you listening to your body, go and see somebody who has the expertise and knowledge to make an informed decision with regards to your state of being. Like, yes, this consultation was warranted, or you know what, you need a little bit of rest is what you need, or I can give you some exercises or some recommendations, but don't allow yourself to be led by an expert, and don't always be too quick to jump to Dr. Google.
I was gonna say I get that a lot. A patient will come in and say, like, having so-and-so pain. I started feeling a little bit, or I Googled, did a couple exercises that I saw on Google for like low back pain or something. And then I thought I was getting better, and then it all of a sudden started to come back. So then I decided I should probably go get it checked out. But if you kind of skip that, sometimes that's like 4 to 6 weeks that people kind of waste thinking that, they found a solution online and it got better. But then that's time too that your body could have been healing and recovering the proper way. And it's, you could be doing more damage than good.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff online, when you look it up, it's just very general, like low back pain. But when you go to see a doctor or physical therapist, they're going to look more at the whole body image. And you might be having low back pain or knee pain, but it could really be coming structurally somewhere else in your body. Like there's more to the story than just low back pain. And it can be treated a bunch of different ways depending on that each individual and their needs.
But to that point, Jill, that was exactly where you found yourself because the source was incorrectly diagnosed. You were treating the wrong the wrong thing.
Yeah,
so,
although, except this time it was, not me using Dr. Google. It was me using like a board certified doctor who still got it wrong.
I get that. But what I'm saying is Liz raises a really good point because often, Liz is responsible for helping you find the source, the root cause of the issue, where I feel like so often you end up on this wild goose chase and you're treating the symptom. You're not treating the root cause. And so you're taking one step forward, but 10 back.
Yeah.
So, real life example here. One of the guys that runs with us in Florida, I think, Troy, we talked about him in another episode. He got some shin pain in one of the runs, and it continued, and it's progressively gotten worse, right? And it's shin on one side. He's, fairly confident that it's like actual shin splints, right? Versus like, oh, my shin sore today. So like Liz, if someone, like this guy came in and is like, oh my God, my shin hurts so bad I can hardly walk. Like how would you approach that? Like if you were him or treating him, like what would you tell him to do?
I mean, I would do my own assessment, like range of motion strength, see him weight bearing, not weight bearing, maybe see how he runs, like see if he can tolerate, but if it's too painful, I'm not going to do that. But if I be concerned of a stress fracture or anything, I would just refer him out to have imaging before I wouldn't treat if I think that there's a chance of that. But if I can differentiate enough between, it's more muscular or it's a bony pathology with risk of a fracture, then if I feel like it's appropriate to treat, then I would go from there. But you have to be careful in some of those cases where there's a chance that it could be a fracture. You don't want to obviously step in and start treating and make matters worse or potentially put them at risk of hurting themselves further.
And then you have folks like me who had a fracture and now every time you have a pain in your leg, you're like, oh my God, is my leg broken?
Yeah.
It's like that
and that's
fear that never goes away.
Yeah.
Well, here's a good question that I want to ask because I think this is whilst we on this topic, I think it's important to consult an expert. Jill's a coach. I'm a coach. Let's talk about and we're going to take this from your standpoint. How important is recovery time?
I think it's very important. I think it's something, like I said, growing up, there was no emphasis on it. Maybe in college, when you're playing in college, that's when we started working on it. But I think it makes a big difference in your ability to go and perform that next time. Like if you don't recover from prior, how are you able to go out and perform again? So I think it's a big component of athletes and their ability to perform to their best ability.
Yeah. I asked that question because I think, Jill, has there ever been a race where you've spoken to another athlete and you've asked them genuinely, when was the last time you took a break? Like what did your recovery look like? 9 times out of 10, athletes, especially triathletes, will talk about active recovery.
Yeah.
And they cannot reference when they actually took time off.
Well, there's part of it's also like there's a lot of literature out there that directs us as, in triathlon specific, like books that directs us towards active recovery, and that active recovery isn't sitting on a couch. It's doing less and with a lower intensity in a unprogrammed kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for me, those are the days that like I'll go out and ride with my kids and whatnot, versus like sitting on the couch watching the latest episode of Outlander with a bag of potato chips or whatever. I mean, that's never happened before. So
this is in Jill's wild imagination, folks. This is not real.
I just made that up.
I was going to say that was very far-fetched.
Yeah. Oh, is there a show with that title? I don't know. I've never heard of it before.
I don't know. You had Liz and I both stumped on that one, Jill. But
yeah. The looks on your face. But no, I mean that's like the what's been espoused to us from many forums. But like there's competing thoughts. I'm aware of that. Of like no, a rest day means like no strenuous activity. Period. And so like in my own training plans that I give my athletes, there's a unprogrammed day, in there. But when they ask me like what should I be doing that day, I'm like nothing hard.
But that's so important though, Jill, in terms of like being compliant, right? Like to a regime. Like it's so important to be cognizant of actually, we always want to achieve and we want to perform at our best and we want to execute. But those hard training days that require significant output are as important for you when, as a coach, you prescribe, a rest day or active recovery, for you to actually exceed and execute on those days, as well as the days that count. They count just as much. They're just as important.
Oh, for sure. So like for me personally, and I think a lot of athletes have a similar schedule. I mean, I'm self-employed today, right? But my hard activities, my long stuff, the endurance stuff, the stuff that like you kind of want to like lay down and close your eyes in a field halfway through. Those are all on weekends, right? It's like Saturday is my lung bike day, which might some days be 2 hours. It might some days be 6 hours, right? And Sundays is the long run day. And it's the same thing. It's like, well, it might be marathon pace for 2 hours. It might be, half marathon pace for 3 hours. Or it might be zone 4 for whatever, or zone 2 for whatever. But then, Monday, you've got all that training load from the whole week. And Monday's like the deload day. And of course, then you see, Tridot, Training Peaks, Strava, wherever you're looking at your metrics, you see it go backwards, and kind of have to ignore that. But yeah, Garmin, I think, currently tells me I need something like 174 hours of recovery. Garmin is wrong.
It's funny because if you so much of what we talk about has such a large toll psychologically. And Liz, I think you getting through, especially when it comes to high performing athletes, I think the biggest struggle you have is speaking into breaking down some of those thought patterns, because it's a case of like, this is what I need you to do in order to get better.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, and just kind of like you talked about, like pain psychologically, how that can be hard to not like alter, but kind of like influence in someone. You never want to discredit somebody's pain, and that's never what we're trying to do. But there's a lot. I feel like it was incorporated more in school for me. Like I think it's a newer thing that's becoming more well known in the fitness industry and just health industry in general. Kind of like that psychosocial aspect of pain. But it can be really hard to break through with people, and especially patients with chronic pain. because that's just all that, you know, they've kind of become used to, and you're so used to feeling poorly and having such a high threshold of pain that you feel like you're never not going to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was kind of mentioning before with your fracture, how it was amazing you were able to train at such a high level and run on it for as long as you did, because that just goes to show like how resilient our bodies truly are. Just, you shouldn't have been doing all that, but
well, right. But at the time, right, it's
Right.
like I remember distinctly asking this question a few times when the orthopedist said it's IT band pain.
Yeah.
They're like, well, refer you to PT, and I went to the local PT guy. I remember asking him, I said, okay, so like, how long is this going to take? And I know, like, for everyone in the medical profession, like, that's like the hardest,
the worst question
answer,
because we
right?
because we want it done tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not giving you a date.
right
because you don't have a magic
there's
wand.
so much that goes into it, like,
right. And I'm like, okay, so like on average, how long does it take someone my age, gender, whatever, for it to heal? And the answer is magically always 6 weeks. Like, I love it. It's like everything takes 6 weeks to heal. And I'm like, okay, well, like, I'm a runner. I have this event coming up. And at the time I was training for a London Marathon, which, was my first 6-star marathon. And it's relatively hard to get into, especially as an American, right?
Yeah.
It's like fractions of a % of people who apply get in, and I got in that year. And like that, I'm like, okay, well, how do we run this? And his answer was, well, I mean, you can keep running, but it's not going to heal. He's like, and actually what he says, he's like, it'll just heal more slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And so what we did is we ran London Marathon, ran the marathons up to London. And then we took the next 8 weeks off, like flat out, cold, nothing, off. It just so happened I had a trip to India in the middle there, so it worked out. It's like, there's nothing like...
Plan more trips.
Well, it's like there's no better way, in my mind, to like derail your training plan than going to a foreign country that is like one of those places where the company you work for doesn't allow you to leave the hotel without an escort.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's like,
wow.
I've worked for, I've been to India many times, and both companies I was there on behalf of both had the same policy, right? It's like, it's one of those countries, it's different enough, especially as a woman, they're like, thou shalt not leave unaccompanied, right? It's like, okay, well, what does the hotel have? Didn't have any treadmills, didn't have bikes, didn't have a pool. So it's like, all right. So what do you do?
Didn't bring your bike?
No.
Different season of her life.
Different season of my life, and different country, and just one more thing to deal with. So no.
Knowing Jill, she was probably up and down the stairwell, the fire escape, or something. Trust me, she was doing something. Created dumbbells out of like water cans, or who knows.
We may have gone like dancing at the club or something. But
there you go.
We'll not talk about that.
Well, let's transition a little bit, Jill. Let's talk about to your point, somebody who comes in with an injury. Mm-hmm. What are post assessment? What are some of those first steps to embarking on rehabilitation?
So, again, in PT, I always say it depends, Tom. It's just that.
Sure. Case by case, not a one size fits all.
Get a straight answer out of her on a hypothetical.
No, but I appreciate that because it is so different person to person. And even if you and I are struggling with the same injury, she's going to treat us completely differently.
So if I was coming in or didn't have the benefit of having like a therapist, what could someone expect as like the types of things that, like, someone comes in with strained muscle, like what are the types of things that they would expect to need to do to kind of rehab that? And like, if someone's prone to that, like what are the types of things they can do to minimize, because I know like you can't really fully prevent it without stopping the activity that caused it. Yeah. But like what are the types of things that people can do to kind of minimize the probability of it happening again?
So I would say a big component of what we like to do at Motive is always incorporating some type of manual therapy, whether it's soft tissue work with our hands, with the grasping devices, or I like to use cupping a lot.
You don't say.
Especially on you. There's different like myofascial release techniques that you can do for individuals at home doing it, using a foam roller, a Theragun. Those are great options to use at home. But I like to typically start sessions with that to kind of loosen up the tissue, bring more blood flow to the area, circulation, and that just kind of helps the tissue be ready to be loaded with the exercises. You go in to, you never exercise just going in cold. You always want to do some type of a warm up. I generally say a dynamic warm up to start, and then kind of warming up that tissue itself. So with that soft tissue, the graston, and that'll just help kind of loosen things up, get it ready to go.
And for those listening who don't know what graston or cupping is, could you describe those?
Yeah, so cupping, that's what I like to do a lot with Jill. She loves it.
Love is such a strong word.
I was going to say, this sounds like a love-hate relationship. You're saying one thing and Jill's facial expression says another.
It's a love-hate. But it's just another modality that improves circulation, brings blood flow to the area. So you're using the suctioning, so it's kind of like removing the skin up from the tissue, and then that allows the blood to flow more freely. I like to do it dynamically, so that's where I'll like move the cup on top of the skin.
That's the fun part.
That's the worst part.
That's the really fun part, especially when like the skin stretches before it starts moving.
Yeah, but so I have her start just statically. I just put the cups on. They sit for a second or two. Then we do movement with cupping. So that's where she does an active movement with whatever activating the muscle that the cups are over. So put it over her quads. So I'll have her do knee extensions and then squats with the cups on. Oof. So when you do it that way, and you put the cups on, and
it's not me, and it's not just me. Do you see the look he gave? He's like imagining how it would feel, and he's like, "Oh my god, she makes you do this like twice a week."
No, well, at least I know she's legit.
You put the cups on when the muscle's in like a shortened position too, so then you're like fully stretching it, like elongating when you're going through the movement. So that makes it more uncomfortable, probably too. But then I finish it with the dynamic cupping. So when she's actively doing the movement, those muscles are able to like move more freely actively under the tissue being pulled up. And then dynamically, you're kind of moving the fascia, the skin, the fat, all of that over top. So it's really improving that mobility of all the tissue underlying the skin, muscles, all that. And then we normally follow it up with some mobility drills. So whatever you were going for, I think it's always good to include a level of like ankle and hip mobility. And then some like thoracolumbar, because when you're running, you're really using all parts of your body. So you don't just want to go in with like just having good ankle mobility. You want everything from top to bottom to be nice and loose. And then we'll go through some general strengthening. I think it's always good to incorporate stability exercises, especially for runners, because that's a big component of what you're doing when you're running.
Yeah, and like early on, one of the things you said to me is like, wow, your right ankle has less mobility and strength than your left.
Yeah.
And we worked on that a bit. It's improved, right?
But going all the way back to like that drop foot, that all kind of makes sense, that it over years that it's kind of like compounded.
Yeah.
And
that's what caused me to go out and get that gibboard thing. Right, which it looks like a oversized, like like a skateboard or snowboard with a strap pulled between the two ends. It's a line. And Troy, I don't know if you saw my video that I put up on Facebook and Instagram about that, but like that's what caused me to buy it. It's like, and what was happening was because of that, when I was getting fatigued, my right foot would turn out as I ran. And you could see it even on the soles of my shoes. Like the left foot would be pretty good. And the right foot would have this kind of turnout. And as the shoes wore, it got harder to kind of pull it back.
Yeah.
And now I've noticed the last few runs I've done, the distance runs, it's still happening, a little bit, but it's much less than it was.
What I wanted to say, Jill, jokes aside, and as I had imagery in my mind with regards to some of these techniques that Liz was describing that your sessions consist of, the reason that you're such a good customer and the fact that you're going back is because in spite of the discomfort, clearly what Liz is doing in terms of the techniques that she's using on you, they're working. So,
despite me every day telling her that I like her a little bit less than I did before.
But you know what? This is Jill's obviously an engineer amongst many others, hyper analytical and just extremely smart. But Liz, that aside, let's talk about some of these techniques that you referenced. You spoke about manual therapy, cupping. What's so exciting to me in this day and age is how things are progressing. We artificial intelligence amongst many others. But in terms of these techniques that you've adopted, you're implementing, what do you see to be the most successful technique with regards to, is there any one technique specifically? Because I know there's ultrasound, there's obviously red light therapy, there's so many. What have you seen the most success with? I know that's a hard question. It's loaded, but at the same time, we're seeing so many things come to market, and there's so many different techniques and methodology. It's what's coming from an expert? What is legitimate and what's not? Because there's obviously a lot of gimmicks out there.
Yeah, I think, honestly, a lot of it is specific to each patient and kind of their buy-in to it.
Yeah.
Not to say that one treatment's more legitimate than the other, but cupping might work great with one person.
Sure.
And another person could have had a horrible experience with it in the past, and whether or not it truly helped them or not, they're never going to like it again.
Okay.
Same thing with ultrasound. I kind of learned it as mixed research to support it. So I personally don't generally use it with patients, but I know therapists that do use it for plantar fasciitis. They'll use it for lateral epicondylitis, is certain diagnoses in conjunction with electrical stimulation, and they have good benefit. They have good outcomes with it.
Okay.
But whether that's patient buy into it or it's truly therapeutic, I don't know. But a lot of PT is patient buy-in and how they come out of feeling from the session. Do they come out feeling better? Then maybe they'll associate less pain with those modalities that were used, the exercises that were used. Not to say that, it's not them actually, the modalities themselves giving the benefit, but I think it is a lot of how a patient perceivs that it helped them.
No, that's fair.
So
that's a great answer.
That's kind of not a great
I appreciate that.
You, but
I do, because it excites me. It excites me because there's obviously a lot on the market. And I think, again, that's where trusting an expert who knows what she's doing, it pays. And I think so often, Jill, I think this will resonate with you because everything we do on a sporting front costs money, right? Everything costs, right? And it's just so often you can be penny wise, pound foolish.
We somehow chose an exceptionally expensive sport, right? Not just in the equipment, but the toll it takes.
But it is what it is. You can choose to spend money on your equipment and buy really good equipment, but if you're not investing in your recovery and your rehab, what good is the money spent on all the, having all the gear?
I mean, they say, the best day is new bike day. Right. But the second best day is the day that you invest in the engine.
1000%, Joel.
Yeah.
That is.
I would agree.
But new bikes are still fun to get.
Yeah. I mean, until they get the first scratch and then you have a meltdown and you realize this is
man,
it's temporary. The minute you do your first ride, you realize that there's a scratch or a ding or a dent or something, and your prized possession is just, I don't know, there's a whole lot of hurt and pain.
On my speed concept, it's 2 years old, and it's got such a pretty paint job, right? I mean, Troy, you've seen it. It's super pretty, right?
I won't argue.
But like, it's starting to get the chips, right?
Oh.
And like the base bar,
See?
like right smack in the middle in front of the stem, it's got like this little rock chip.
Yeah.
I can't afford a new one. These things cost as much as like a used car,
They do.
In fact, I think my bike cost more than my first car did.
Yeah, it's true.
And then you invest so much in the maintenance and upkeep over time. But and then like in the back on the fork, from the chain and whatnot, there's crazing in the paint and chips, and it's like, man.
Jill, I think that has to be the biggest takeaway, and I think obviously, like,
that we need a new bike day.
No, it's to reinforce the fact and reinforce how important taking whether it's preventative or just being proactive with regards to your recovery, your rehabilitation. I mean, it's so important, and negating that and looking to take like quick fixes or trying to bypass what it is that Liz is trying to help yourself and many others, myself included, achieve.
Yeah. Well, how did we start before we hit the record button? Did you have a thing around your rear?
Yeah, I did. I was quietly sitting with a ice belt on, and I didn't even touch on that because, Liz,
the way you said it again, it still sounds like ice.
I heard ice.
Ice belt.
That's
Jill's,
better.
I heard the belt, so I knew what he was saying.
Okay, well, trust the expert, and I've obviously got an accent, so I will lean in on the ice. But I mean, that's profound in and of itself, right? Because if I talk to our expert on the panel today, and I say to Liz, how important is ice? I think people really underestimate how important ice is when it comes to injury prevention and rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah. So for any modality like ice or heat, I think they can play really big roles as long as they're kind of like used correctly, not overused.
Yeah.
Same thing with stim. Anytime you kind of like overuse any stimulus, whether it's heat, ice, electrical stimulation, your body will start to accommodate to it, and it's not going to have the same effect. But knowing when to use it and how long to use it for can play a big role in your ability to control that inflammation after workouts and after runs, and really help speed up the recovery process.
So 2 really popular things right now. Well, 3, right? You got the percussion guns like, Theragun, Hyper Ice, and there's like 50 other brands. They seem useful. Everybody uses them. But probably everybody uses them wrong, I would suppose. The other, right? So like ice baths, you see the ads all over the place, and
celebrities, social media. That was a big trend.
Social media. You show up to different events. A lot of them have vendors. I have one. We showed up to an event. It was the half Ironman in Chattanooga, and there's the Orca guy, and like, woo, give you a big discount, and it does keep the water cold. And then like the consumer grade stim stuff, which is pretty readily available, although expensive. Like, do you think that like someone who's going out and running 150 miles a week should be throwing themselves in an ice bath, right? Like right now, the conventional wisdom is, they should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of therapeutic benefit to the ice baths. I don't think
so like to be clear, they suck.
What, ice bath?
Oh, absolutely. Like if you've never sat in one, it takes your breath away.
We used to have to go from hot to cold in college, and I hated it. They gave us little foot socks, little toe socks. I
had to buy those because my feet were getting so cold that they would the limiting factor of how much time I could spend in was my tolerance for my feet feeling like they were on fire.
Yeah.
It was that cold?
Yeah.
It was that cold.
It's cold.
And that was like, you know, the temperature of the water wasn't that cold. It was like 42 degrees or something.
Have you done cryotherapy, Joel?
No. That sounds cold.
Ask Liz about cryotherapy.
Why don't you? She's standing right
there.
Oh,
I've done it. Trust me. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. You talk about cold.
Got the t-shirt.
Cryotherapy is a whole nother ball game.
Did you feel like it was beneficial when you did the cryo?
I mean, it was numbing to the bone, like indescribably cold. I've done an ice bath, and when I try and compare it to that of cryotherapy, there's no comparison.
Yeah. And the ice bath you can control too. Like, I feel like you can still get the same effect. You don't have to make it like Arctic cold, you know, Titanic kind of cold, but I feel like you make it cold enough so that it kind of shocks the system. That's the whole idea of it. And then, I mean, some people sit in it for a minute, 3 minutes. Like, I think 30 seconds is good.
Yeah.
Get the job done of what you're trying to do. And
everything I read says, like, you know, start at 30 seconds and work your way up to like 5 to 7 minutes, right?
I don't know if you truly, I haven't done enough like research on the actual data of it, but I feel like you still are getting some therapeutic benefit from even just 30 seconds. I don't think you need to be in there for 5 minutes to, you know, get the full effect of it. I think it'll still kind of help like, drop those cortisol. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. But I think you'll still get benefit from doing even just like little bits of it.
So I'm so bad. We have ours out on the patio in the back. And
you have one?
Oh yeah.
I don't think I knew.
Jill's got a lot of tools. The rollers you might have seen on social media, but she's got every tool under the sun.
I don't know about that.
Okay,
I did buy one.
She's well equipped. Let's put it that way. It pays to be prepared. Jill, there's the smile. Now there's the honesty coming through, Jill.
Yeah. No, I have an ice bath. I have one of the Orca ones because, you know, they were at the 70.3 Chattanooga last year, and, you know, I you know, bought into it. And, you know, so it's sitting out. Well, you know, like most of them, you know, are like a bin that you put ice in, and this one has like, you know, a chiller that sits next to it, and, you know, it's a pain in the rump, but it does work, and it works well. Getting the air out of the hoses, though, like massive pain in the butt. But yeah, so it would be like 95 degrees outside, and, you know, dipping into this like 40-degree water. I'll get in, and I'll like take my phone and set the timer. It's like, your goal today is 90 seconds.
There you go.
But I ended up buying like the little the winter booties, the like wetsuit booties from Zoot. They had some sale, and I'm like, yeah, I'll jump on that. And, you know, they do help, because like what would happen was, like, yeah, it sucks and it's cold. I felt like I got some benefit out of it, but like we talked earlier, I don't know if it's psychological or if it's real, but I kind of don't care.
It works.
Because at the end of the day, like, I feel like it works, and like whether it's psychosomatic or if it's real, like, doesn't matter if it helps. But yeah, like, I'll get in, and the limiting factor for me is like how long I can tolerate my feet being frozen. And like for me, like when my feet get really cold, they feel like they're on fire.
Wow. Yeah. Well, to Liz's point, I think she raised the fact that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. Yeah. And I think that's what's really important to note, is the fact that what works for you, if it's cupping or ice baths, then, you know, then that's what you go with. Yeah.
Although I'm glad that she's not as big a fan of Graston as my last PT was, because as much as I loved the guy, you know, he was awesome, but my right IT band, like that whole length from hip to knee, was in this constant state of black and blue.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was always bruised.
I think also, not to get away from the recovery, but just a big part in general of like injury prevention is really that strength training component. So
Well
all the
said.
like gadgets and everything with recovery is good, but I feel like a lot of times people are looking for that quick fix to kind of get rid of their pain. And a lot of times it stems from a lack of strength or structural deficit, something joint related. And if you don't fix that, no matter what like recovery modality you use, it's never going to go away. And
so do you think, so I have two great loves in my sporting life, right? There's the triathlon stuff, which we tend to talk about the most, but at my heart, I'm a Run Disney runner. And I've been doing princess runs for longer than I've been doing triathlons. A lot of those are like what they call challenge runs, right? So in a single like 3 or 4 day span, there'll be multiple runs of like ascending distances, right? So like a lot of them will be like 5K one day, and then 10K on the next day, and then a half marathon on the next day. One of them then adds a full marathon. The one that we just did at springtime, it's hotter, so it's a 5K, 10K, 10 miler. Do you think that for folks who are training for those kinds of events, and it's not just Disney that does them, right? Like I know Philadelphia at their marathon weekend, they do an 8K, and then they have a half marathon the same day, and then a full marathon the next day. So you'll run the half marathon and then the 8K. And then I think it's 8. And then the following day, you'll run the full. So for folks doing these kinds of like multi-day, multi-distance, like, they really are ultra endurance events. Do you think that like the strength training and the recovery that they need to do, to prepare for those events is different from your normal training for a single distance event?
I would say probably different in terms of like a higher intensity. So for any runner, it's like endurance training is going to be super important. Any distance runner, but if you're running that many long distance events, like that many days in a row, I feel like your intensity of training and recovery is just a level higher than if you're just doing one racer.
And also more important, right, Liz? Like, like to your point, if you're just doing a single discipline or a single day event, like it's important. But what Liz is saying is like, if you're doing like a combination or multiple events, like it's even more important. It's paramount, in fact.
Especially the recovery in that scenario, like each of those days, making sure that like you're truly, once you're done the race, like you're focusing on recovery and preparing for the next day.
Like these multi-distance events, after the last race, you can tell who didn't train for the recovery aspects, because you'll see these you'll see the posts on like Facebook or whatever social media that are like, how long is it before it stops hurting? And it's like, oh dear, it's been a week, it shouldn't still hurt.
Actually, it's funny you say that, Jill, because I actually saw a post from Ben Canoe, and he had a sprint finish at Oceanside. And he actually he spoke about the fact that sprint finish, the impact that had on his recovery. Like,
oh, I bet
the output of, you finish, or you envisage finishing a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're doing a sprint at the end of a 70.3
and
triathlon.
like in that case, right, like that sprint was what, a quarter mile, half a mile, so at that point you've already gone 65 to 70 miles, 69 to 70 miles, right?
Correct.
And your body is at that point super fatigued, and now you're asking for it to pull out all the stops to be a track runner for the next 10th of a mile or 2/10, and like in running, there it is a thing, right? Like kick it at the end, but it means something different when you're like really truly sprinting and kicking it at the end of an ultra, right?
And to Liz's point, Jill, I think that's where injury becomes a massive concern, is when, again, you're doing these combination events or you're doing multi-disciplined events, the body's fatigued. And so your susceptibility to injury is way more. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's also something that we need to be mindful and cognizant of, is like, hey, if you're running on an empty tank or you've done a series of races, like, again, listen to your body, know your limitations, and be mindful, because it doesn't only affect the event or the moment, it affects the recovery and what's to come.
Yeah. And like in that case where there's, you're a pro athlete and there's like actual dollars on the line,
sure,
I would imagine that the mindset and motivation is different, and that you might be more willing to live with the consequences.
Sure.
Where like I have definitely been in that spot where it's like, you know what, I am not going to sprint. That person who just asked me, that I'm like annoyed that they just asked me, and I really hope they're not in my age group. We're like, no, I'm not going to sprint, because if I do, I'm probably going to hurt myself.
No.
Although I will say that 99.9% or more of my sports injuries happen in training, not in actual race events.
That's interesting.
I think I can only remember one time where I actually injured myself during a sporting event.
Was it like an overuse type injury, or you mean
it was an overuse injury? It was me doing a race that I probably shouldn't have, because I had done an Ironman 3 days before.
Oh, there you go.
And then I ran a metric marathon.
Nice.
Well, on that note,
not to get specific, right? So, Liz, any other things that you want our listeners to hear?
No, I think you hit a lot of the points. Recovery is super important. Like we just mentioned, strength and resistance training. I didn't really say this, but like cross training. So mixing in swimming with it, trying to strengthen your body in different ways.
You're saying everybody should be triathletes.
Basically, yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of merit to what Liz is saying with regards to cross training. I think having a holistic approach, fundamentally your strength and conditioning, I think that's a huge component. Jill, we speak about a lot of these components of triathlon that are not necessarily categorically a certain discipline, but like nutrition is the fourth discipline of triathlon. And I think strength and conditioning is another discipline that cannot be negated, irrespective of your sporting code.
And it's the first workout that people like drop off the plan, when the reality is it should be the last one that you take off. It's like,
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Go do that 45-minute strength session instead of the hour run that you had planned. Like, given the choice, like do the strength, not the run.
I think we can all agree on that.
But I've also heard, with more loudly recently, is recover as hard as you train.
Well said. That is profound.
Right.
Well said.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't take credit for it, but I like the phrase, so I've been using it.
That resonates deeply, and I think Liz appreciates that.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, that goes a long way.
Well said.
Yeah, and it's not just us old farts that break ourselves.
No,
hey,
because to be fair, I think when we're younger, to your point, with regards to your son, we go till we break, and we somehow we don't forget that, because we're still doing it at an older age. Although we're supposed to be executing a little more wisdom when it comes to our choices.
Wisdom's overrated.
Nice one. The truth is, we shouldn't be waiting for the wheels to fall off before we
shouldn't. And when the average person looks at like what we're doing and is like, you better be getting chased by something that's going to eat you. That means something, right? Like we started off this conversation like we're built differently, and like things that yeah, and this isn't just triathletes, right? It's runners, triathletes, cyclists, swimmers, anybody who's involved in really endurance sports. You know, when people say that, it's like, okay, well, you know, your punishment is my sport. So like we start off from a different place.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think this was a fantastic conversation. Liz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, now I have to think even harder about what like post Texas recovery looks like.
Good.
Right?
You.
Good. Thank you, Liz.
Because my post dopey recovery often looks like 4 park days in one of the parks, but we'll be in Texas. I've never been to
You have
Texas.
to have fun though.
Never been to Texas before. I even talked to someone this morning. Yeah, I'm setting up a new website, and so I talked to someone about SEO who's based in Texas, and she's like, "You're gonna love it here. It's awesome." So I can't wait.
That's great.
Can't wait to see it. All right. Well, and Troy, thanks again for coming and being part of this. I thought today was great, and I hope our listeners think the same. So.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I think there were so many learnings, so many lessons, so much insight, Liz. It was phenomenal, and I think it really helps clarify what's important or what should be important. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a great conversation.
And as always, if you like this episode of this podcast, please like, subscribe on your favorite streamer or YouTube. The full video version is posted on YouTube. The streamers, you can only hear the audio. And thanks again for listening in. This is episode 4. Stay tuned next week for episode 5. We're hopefully going to be talking to a number of age group triathletes about their experiences coming out of their first full distance Ironman. So that should be really interesting. So till then.
And last but not least, good luck to our Ironman, Jill Bartholomew, this weekend at Ironman Texas. Go, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.